or like a valuable portfolio that you consciously build, day by day, over a lifetime. So this really gets to the heart of it, doesn't it? I want you to think about this for a second. Is your partnership something to be used up for its immediate high, like a cup of coffee? Or is it something you're investing in, nurturing, and expecting to grow in value over the long haul? Because really, your answer to that question changes everything.
Okay, so let's break down these two mindsets. On one side, you've got the consumable good approach. This is all about chasing that spark, that initial excitement. And when it fades, well, the relationship feels used up, depleted. But the endowment mindset, that's totally different. It focuses on compounding value. It's about nurturing the asset through the good times and the bad, knowing that real wealth comes from that sustained long-term investment.
All right, so if we're going to build a portfolio, we have to start with the most important part, our foundational principle. Think of these as the core, non-negotiable assets that everything else is built on. Without them, there's just no chance for long-term growth.
Now this is where things get really interesting, because it kind of flips our usual thinking on its head. Our culture is obsessed with love, that feeling, that spark. But in this investment model, love is actually the interest. It can be high one day and low the next, right? It fluctuates. Respect, on the other hand, that's the principle. That's your initial investment. It's the stable floor. If you allow disrespect, the sarcasm, the contempt, the boundary violations, you're literally depleting your principal. The entire account is heading for bankruptcy, and it doesn't matter how much interest you feel. Another absolutely critical asset is what we can call individual sovereignty. Look, the romantic myth tells us our partners should be our everything, but honestly, that's just a recipe for disaster. A healthy we is formed by two strong whole I's. When individuals start to lose their own friends, their own hobbies, their own personal growth, the we doesn't get stronger. It actually becomes a codependent sinkhole, where you've got two halves just desperately trying to make a whole.
Okay, so once our foundation is secure, it's time to grow the portfolio. And just like with money, wealth isn't built in one big lucky windfall. Nope, it's built through small, consistent deposits that over time generate those amazing compounding returns. 5, 2, 1. I want you to burn this number into your brain. It's what researchers call the magic ratio. And it turns out it's one of the most powerful predictors of the health and long-term success of your entire relationship portfolio.
Yeah, research from the Gottman Institute is incredibly clear on this. For a relationship to stay stable and, well, wealthy, you need at least 5 positive interactions for every single negative one. Now, you might be thinking, why so high? Well, it's because our brains are hardwired with a negativity bias. We feel the sting of a criticism way more intensely than the warmth of a compliment. So to stay in the black, you have to be really intentional about over-depositing the good stuff.
So what do these little deposits actually look like? Well, they're called emotional bids, and they're the smallest, most fundamental unit of connection you can have. It's not about big, grand gestures. It's the tiny, hey, look at that bird moments. It's a passing touch as you walk by. It's putting down your phone for just 3 seconds to actually listen. Relationship wealth is built, or it's lost, in these tiny, tiny little windows. Look, every single investment portfolio on the planet faces downturns. It's just inevitable. The real key isn't trying to avoid the volatility, it's learning how to manage it. Conflict in a relationship isn't a sign of failure. It's just market volatility. This quote just cuts right to the heart of it, doesn't it? The ego. The ego is the primary driver of relationship bankruptcy. It screams for validation, it wants to win the argument, it demands to be proven right. But here's the thing. You can't be right and be connected at the same time. You have to choose. So how do we actually make that choice in the heat of the moment? By reframing the entire event. A conflict isn't a battle to be won, it's an information discovery tool. So the process is simple, but not easy. First, just notice your own defensiveness flaring up. Second, and this is crucial, create a pause. And third, shift your goal from winning to learning. Ask yourself, what is this teaching me about what my partner values, or fears, or needs, right? So, after you've secured your principal, made all those daily deposits, and learned to navigate the market volatility, what's the ultimate payout? Well, it's cashing in on all that hard work for the real prize, a deep, secure, and conscious intimacy. A key part of that big payout is what you could call the transparency premium. I want you to think of secrets, even the small ones, as a form of high-interest debt. They just drain your mental energy and they create distance. Radical, kind transparency, though,
That creates a safety premium. It's that feeling that you can be fully known, flaws and all, and still be accepted. Now that is true wealth. So many people mourn the end of the honeymoon phase, right? They think the love is gone. But wealthy investors see it for what it really is, an upgrade. That infatuation stage is fun, sure, but it's a temporary chemical high. When that fades, that's when you get to the work, and that's where you build the real long-term equity. You're basically trading a cheap thrill for actual gold. This chart just summarizes the two strategies perfectly. The poor investor has really high standards for their partner and pretty low standards for themselves. Their whole focus is on demanding that the other person changes. The wealthy investor does the complete opposite. They hold themselves to a high standard while offering a ton of grace to their partner. Their focus is on self-regulation because that's the only thing they can truly control. And that brings us right here to our final definition. Relationship wealth, it isn't the absence of problems. It is the compounding return you earn from your consistent investment in respect, in transparency, and in those thousands of tiny daily deposits of connection. And the outcome of all that work is a secure and conscious intimacy that can weather any storm. So I'll leave you with this to think about. Looking at your own relationship portfolio, what is its single greatest asset right now? And maybe more importantly, what is one small, intentional deposit you are going to make this week? Because true wealth isn't found, it's built.
Today, we're going to look at relationships in a totally different way. Not as some big mystery, but as a system that has its own architecture, its own code. We're going to explore the hidden rules that govern how we connect, and, more importantly, what happens when that code has a critical bug. So let's just start with a huge question. Imagine your relationship is a piece of software running on your computer. What is the one single bug, that one line of bad code that can crash the entire program, no matter how great all the other features are? That's what we're here to find out. To find that bug, we need to look under the hood. We're going to explore the source code of human connection itself. We'll be using this really powerful model that treats relationships like an algorithm, so we can see exactly how they're supposed to function and how they fail. You know, sometimes the best way to understand how something is supposed to work is to take a good, hard look at one that's completely broken. So that's where we'll begin, with the code behind a struggling, failing relational algorithm. This is what the source material calls the relationship poverty equation. And really, it's just a way of putting into mathematical terms what it feels like to be in a relationship that's emotionally bankrupt, one that's just draining and unfulfilling. Now, don't let the math scare you. The structure here is what's really important. Up top, in the numerator, you've got all the negative stuff adding up and piling on top of each other. Unmet needs, miscommunication, old wounds. And down below, in the denominator, you have the positive forces, things like emotional safety and consistency. Notice how they're being multiplied? They're supposed to build on each other and make the relationship strong. But in any complex system, there are things called constraints. You can think of them as non-negotiable, hard-coded rules. A single constraint can override every other command in the program and basically decide the final output all by itself. And in this relationship algorithm, there's one that is absolutely critical. And here it is, the system-killing bug. The rule is brutally simple. If the variable for continuous verbal abuse is anything greater than 0, meaning if it exists in the system at all, then the value for emotional safety is automatically and immediately forced to 0. It's not a gradual decline, it is an instant override. 0. Gone. Poof. And it doesn't matter how much self-awareness you have, or how much consistency, or how many shared values are in that system. When this bug is present, the value for safety is completely and utterly nullified. So, here's the devastating conclusion. When emotional safety becomes 0, that entire denominator in our poverty equation collapses. And as we all learned in math class, you can't divide by 0. The equation becomes undefined. For our purposes, the output is effectively 0. The whole system fails. All those positive things you were multiplying together, they become completely worthless. Okay, so that's the broken system. It's pretty bleak. But what about a healthy one? Let's flip the script and see how we can build something strong. We're now going to look at the model for relationship wealth.
This is basically the roadmap to a thriving connection. It all starts with the foundation, your own self-worth and your ability to regulate your emotions. From that strong base, you start multiplying your wealth with honest communication, with reliability, with mutual investment. But just as important, you have to subtract the things that drain your account, things like avoidance and, of course, continuous verbal abuse. Even in a healthy system, it's still a variable that actively drains your resources. Let's think about this on a day-to-day level. A real connection is like a bridge you build. It's built with presence, with attunement, and you repair it after every little conflict. But as the equation shows, if continuous verbal abuse is present, it's constantly subtracting from your efforts. It erodes any attempt at repair faster than you can build it. The system can just never become stable. We can distill this down even further to a super simple, powerful rule. Think of it like this. Love is the product of care multiplied by safety, multiplied by respect. And since they're multiplied, if any one of them drops to zero, if there's no safety or no respect, the entire equation collapses. The answer is zero. Love itself just cannot be sustained. So we've looked at all these equations, all these models. What is the single most important thing to take away from all of this? What is the one non-negotiable insight from this entire framework? This is it. The core problem in a failing relationship isn't necessarily that the love is gone. It's the structural, fundamental absence of emotional safety. Without safety, love simply has no foundation to stand on. It can't operate. And this slide shows us why safety is so fundamental. I mean, intimacy requires vulnerability, right? It's about being willing to be open and truly seen. But if the system's code is literally written to punish you for being vulnerable, then true intimacy becomes impossible. The algorithm is fundamentally broken from the start. Now, it is so important to make a distinction here. This model is not talking about healthy conflict or arguments. As you can see, healthy conflict is totally different. It's mutual, it focuses on the issue, not attacking the person, and it can actually build understanding and make you stronger. Continuous verbal abuse, on the other hand, is not mutual. It focuses on tearing down the person, and as we've seen, it is not a communication style. It is a system-killing variable. They are not in the same category. So we'll end by turning this back to you. If your own relationship is a system, what is your non-negotiable rule for safety? What is the one variable that absolutely must be present for anything else to function? It's a really powerful question to consider. And of course, a quick disclaimer, this explainer is for educational purposes. If you are experiencing abuse, please consider seeking support from a qualified professional.